Hey there, girlie.
Hi.
How you doing? There's
Good.
that.
How are you?
Good. I'm still a little sick from a cold, but you still got your beautiful geode behind you there.
I do. I do. Hopefully we can stay connected. It's telling me we have a poor connection,
Oh,
so we'll
really?
just
Oh,
keep our
okay.
fingers.
Seems fine from my end. Okay.
Good.
How's our little boy? Well, big boy.
He's he's here. I always meditate and prepare for these sessions. But I guess I've never actually taken the time until today to actually say the words, Eric, I welcome you into my home, into my consciousness and my awareness to influence, blah, blah, blah. I've never actually said those words. And as soon as I said that, I heard Eric go, when did you get so formal? I
Oh,
was
that's so
like,
funny.
huh? It's like, oh, hi, Eric.
She's just paying
So
you some respects. Paying the dude some respects. That's all, Eric.
yeah, he's so sweet. He's funny because I was like just burning my Palo Santo and like just trying to take a really good, clean approach. And he was like, when'd you get so formal?
That's cute.
So,
All right. Well, we're gonna do something interesting today, Eric. And I don't know if you know this, but we're gonna ask things about God. Not too small a question, right?
he put his hand on his hip and he like scratches his head. He goes, well, I'm pretty much always interesting, so let's do it.
Okay, right. All right. Well, first of
Yep.
all, just let's ask the simple question, dude. What is God?
He says, his energy just like shifted completely. He goes, he says, first of all, he says, Mom, I love you. He's
I
blowing a
love
kiss at
you too. You never want to
He's
forget that,
like,
do
now,
you? Now you're
yeah,
ready.
he's like, start. He's so sweet. He says, you have a simple question, I have a simple answer. He says, God is, he's using his fingers like a little boy. He goes, God is life, God is presence. And that's it, he says. That's how he does it. He's like, like a little kid would be like
Uh
real,
huh.
like with their fingers in their face.
That's
That's what he's
funny.
doing. He goes, but we can talk about that. We can break that down.
Yeah, dude.
But God is
Please
like,
go into detail.
God is right, is now. So he says, when you look around you and everything that's around you with life in it, with life force and evolution of that life force or within that life, that's what God is. And that's essentially in everything, he says. So hold that thought, he says. Now, with everything that you do see and that you do perceive, because it's being perceived now, he'll get into that a little bit more. He goes, I gotta bust up some myths today. Like there's some myths. Okay. So he says, but anyway, like what you look around and what you perceive in your now, um, that is God's expression to you, but God's not a person. He says, he goes, myth number one, and he's like putting a line through it, bust it. God's not a person. God is the life that's in everything. And everything that you perceive with life is God showing self to you, if you want to think about it that way, he
Okay.
said. Now, he goes, I want to talk about that present thing for a minute.
Yeah, that's confusing.
He says, when you, okay, so apparently we need to bust a lot of myths because he says that I'm Erik Madhus. He says, he puts his hands up. He says, this is my perspective and my understanding, and I'm going to share it with you. So don't hate the messenger, he says.
Hmm.
So he says, I'm like trembling because he has such a serious energy right now.
Wow.
He says, God is now, right? Hopefully, at least the majority of us get that by now, he says. So he goes, now let's talk about what that really means.
Yeah, let's. Because
He's
I'm confused.
associating that with fear. because he's going, so many people, and of course you're entitled. You're entitled. He's like using that tone. You're entitled to your views, your opinions, your beliefs. Just don't let them trip you up, he says, because then you can stay stuck in that experience. When you look at God, he says, look at life in everything, okay? And the presence in that. What he's trying to say is like God is now, but we have a fear of God that it's like blackmail. He keeps using the form, like the image in the form of blackmail. And what he's trying to associate is like, why do we hold God against ourselves when what we really want is that oneness with God? We want that realization. But it's like we hold that against ourselves. A lot of like old traditional type of Christians and even other, belief systems hold God against them, like, oh gosh, look what I did way back then. I can't believe I did that. God's gonna punish me. That's what he's like talking about, this whole blackmail thing. Like, well, God, he's like, remember, God is always now. God is not then. So, and again, it's he's really trying to emphasize God is not a person. God doesn't think and act and behave like a person. Like, oh, you screwed up in the past, you're going to get punished for that. Just you wait. That it is, Mom, it's not possible. He says God can only be now and is the living life force
Now.
in everything that is always present. And if you believe, oh God, I have chills because he's so like jacked with this. Because he's also talking about the future, like how people also like they pray or meditate or whatever you want to call it, and use the future like borrowed time or something, or like borrowed forgiveness. Like that's the feeling that. So we keep ourselves trapped in this bubble that we think we're being present, but we're really not. And essentially, then we're it's like we are separating ourselves from being in that oneness, being in that union of God. So that's what
Because
he
of
wants
fear.
people to understand.
All because of fear.
Yeah.
Fear of past and fear of future. But there is no past. There is no future. It's all happening now. There is no time.
Right.
That's what makes
He
it so
says, Mom,
hard for us linear timeline people.
yeah, and he's even going into talking about, like, could you imagine if there was a God God was associated with the past and the future? Could you imagine having a God that is not present? Could you imagine what that would be like? And I mean, obviously, he's showing all kinds of not good things. So he's trying to remind people of, like, don't be your own hell, basically, because when you employ that belief that God is elsewhere, not now with you, and the world around you, then you employ that reality. You live it. You face it. You fear it. So he says, and then you're trapped by, you react emotionally.
Yeah.
So it becomes this cycle that continues and continues until you can accept the simplicity of God being now. God is now. God is everything, all the time, everywhere, and
Well,
in everything,
well,
in every breath.
you say God is life and we're life. Does that mean we are whole and part of God?
We are, he says.
So
He says
realizing that might make us help us connect to God if we know we are God. We're whole and part of
exactly,
God.
we
Okay.
are, and so
Yeah.
many people. He says, Mom, so many people are afraid to say that. They're afraid to hear that. He says,
Like who died and made you
they,
God? Is that kind of thing?
exactly.
Yeah.
Like there are certain religions that believe, um, you are to like render yourself. He says there's even religions that teach you to render yourself completely powerless and helpless, to something greater than yourself, being like God.
Yeah.
But the actual realization is that you are God, expressed as Elisa, expressed as Kim, expressed as Erik. So when we realize that we are the creator, It's like such a a huge moment, and then he goes, "Duh."
Oh,
It's
Eric,
such a big thing, and then he goes, "Duh,"
our
when he says,
comic
"When you
relief.
realize that, yeah, when you are the creator," he goes, "Duh." He says, then obviously your whole world will change, your whole world will shift. You begin to live in that understanding of why things are the way they are and your involvement or interaction with the world around you.
Yeah,
You basically take a load off, he says, and
yeah.
he's like showing himself taking off this heavy backpack. But there are so many people that are so afraid, he says, still to think that and believe that and employ that belief.
Well, can you give me
Um,
can you give me some circumstances whereby that load is off and how much easier life would be if we understood that we are the creator, that we have that divinity within us?
he says one of the biggest loads that you can let go of is regret. He's
Yeah.
like circling the word regret. When you realize that you are the creator, that the creator is expressing self through you in this living form, um, you you come into a realization that uh, it's like full acceptance. It's accepting everything that is and how it's been, how it's going to be, and basically you let go, Mom, of um, I'm trying to find the right word. He's talking about salvation in regards to the future. So you let go of thinking like, oh well, when this happens, it'll be better.
Yeah.
You don't even need to think that way anymore because you realize that oneness in the now. You don't need it to be better. You accept what it is, he says.
Ah.
And then when we look at regret, you again can take value out of what happened, no matter what happened. Um, for example, I mean, I appreciate hearing this right now because my morning is terrible right now.
Oh.
I got a call from school. My son used a racist comment against someone, and I am just like shattered over this
Mm.
because kids will be kids, but thought I taught him better than that.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out like how do I let this go, because it's terrible.
Yeah.
So what he's saying is when you look at regret, you again use the future to almost like neutralize what happened in the past, or we
Mm-hmm.
think we can. We think, well, I screwed up in the past. I'm not going to do that again. So
It
we
makes it all
believe that
better.
it
Yeah.
neutralizes. But in all reality, Mom, when we realize our wholeness as God expressing self and living through us, we learn from it. So there's no negative emotions associated with anything. There's no fear,
Right.
there's
There's
no
always
apprehension,
value.
there's
There's always value in everything, including what you're going through right now.
right. And there's always acceptance and understanding. So he says, but the hard thing is, Mom, is first of all, people have to accept that.
Mm.
You accept it. You don't go, well, wait a minute, how can that be? And I need to understand, and please explain, and let me control. He says you have to be able to step above that, step over that, and just accept in the heart space
Mm-hmm.
that we are all the creator, living in all these different forms. Everything from a tiny little ant to humans and so on and so on. All of these different forms with life force. This is evolution, Mom. He says this is God, and God is the action, and God is also the reaction.
Mm.
God is everything.
Yeah. God
And
is everything, right? Is God an energy? I guess everything is
yes,
energy, so it must be. Is it? Is he, she, that energy called love? Would you say that? I've heard that before. God is love.
this is what he responded. He said, God is love. So he didn't just say yes, he said God is love.
Okay.
Because that pure true love is pure true being. He says, Mom, think of God as like God is a verb, not a noun. Is that right? Did I say that right?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
God is a verb, not a noun. God is because he's trying to show like this action with continual evolution, continual happening, like action, reaction, so with that, he goes, stop right there, talk about that. So what he's showing is like
Oopsie. Sorry.
that's okay. Anything that happens and, the reaction occurs to everything that happens, he says, is meant to be. If it wasn't, it's all divinely orchestrated. And he's even saying it's like, there's nothing that can happen that isn't supposed to. So that's why we shouldn't have regrets, because he says, everything that happens is meant to happen. So whether or not you can find the value in it, that's up to you.
But it's
He
not
says, but
fate. It's not fate, is it? Because we have free will. We design our own spiritual contracts. It's not like, okay, here's your marching orders. This is what you're supposed to do in that life.
yeah, he's even saying like fate. Sometimes people they take that as like their ticket out. Like
Yeah.
when shitty things happen, they're like, oh, must have been fate. Must have been,
Or it's
He's
God's
like, but
will. Or it's God's will. Say that a lot.
yeah, you gotta look. You gotta look beyond that and know that you are the creator living in this way. So that is why there's free will, because you are that. You are it. You are that will. You
Okay.
create your life. Um, Now he's kind of like mumbling about like before you incarnate, you can predetermine. There's no time, so it's not like
Yeah.
pre, but it's just it's literally what these are his words. It's just an energy sync. You sync with a happening. You sync
Oh,
with an
wow.
event. You sort of like align with it.
Oh.
And then, of course, when you're born, when you incarnate, then things are perceived in a linear way. But it's just like aligning with
Okay.
um,
I like that. You
whatever.
sync with the energy. You energy sync. I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, just showing it like coming together and aligning.
Does
So
God?
he's like, oh,
What
go
is,
ahead.
oh no, you go ahead. Finish.
Um, he's kind of going back to he's writing the word and he has such soft, compassionate energy when he says this because, um, I mean, he just gets really compassionate and about everything really, but he really wants people to take this home or take this away from this message. He's writing the word simple, and you have to let it be simple. The realization, like that place of peace, that place of all is good and all is well all the time, he says. You have to let it be simple because as soon, and that simplicity is what literally opens the doorway to consciousness, to being awake and aware in a completely different way. He says, but as soon as we have to resist and argue, um, he's like holding his hand out. He's like, you know what this is, Mom? As soon as we have to resist that, we fall back asleep. We fall back into the unconscious state of being.
Mm-hmm.
And then we deny ourselves what we naturally are. So he's like, this feeds into so many other things. All of these psychic abilities or whatever you want to call them, coming into that conscious state of mind or awareness is like the links, the byway, he says, to all. It's like the access point. Okay, Jesus, now he's talking about the pineal gland. He's like talking so fast. So he's like, that is the point of consciousness. It is, and first you have to accept and allow the idea, the knowing that you are the creator expressed. He says, how could it be any other way? It's not like, because do you really think that there's, I'm sorry, and I truly hope, listen, I'm just the messenger, so I hope this does not offend anybody. But he says, Mom, do you really think that there would be a man sitting in heaven that could control billions of people?
No.
No. So how could that be? He's like kind of laughing. He says, of course, God is almighty. God is everything and for everything, by everything, and of everything. So, but God is that thing in us that gives us life. If there was no God, there'd be no us.
Mm.
So he wants us to be able to live it in us, like be it. So he goes, yeah, I said it, be God.
There we go.
So,
Well, I mean, to be awake, you have to be awake in order to do that, I'm sure. So what does it mean to be awake? Just real succinctly, because I have a bunch of questions I need to fit in here.
he goes, okay. You said keep it quick because I have a bunch of questions. He goes, okay. To be quick is to let go of your question, or to be awake is to let go of your questions and
Oh,
accept what.
okay. All right.
So
But
of
no,
course he's not talking about your questions,
I
but
know.
just in life in general, when we question our being, our everything around us, we're not awake. When we accept everything and we allow ourselves to be in that natural flow, and it starts with the pineal gland. He keeps like referring to the pineal gland as the point of consciousness
Okay.
to foster its health. Um,
How do we do that?
and you'll kind of, it's like showing like you'll open up your gateway. He keeps calling it like a byway. You'll open up your byway back
Mm,
to your true divine nature.
okay. How do we
Um,
make it healthy?
he's like going like this. He goes, there's all kinds of things you can do. You can change your diet. Changing your diet as humans is going to be the most important thing first, because we are living, breathing bodies that are affected by, other tangible things, foods and drinks and so on. Um, he's showing like a he goes, oil. You got to talk about oil, Kim. You got to talk about oil. So he's showing me my bottle of frankincense oil
Okay.
that I have. He's also referencing um, sometimes he goes, I know sometimes this shit is weird, but it's helpful, I promise. He's showing like cilantro.
Okay.
I don't know
I
what's in
love
cilantro.
cilantro. Mm.
Um, he's like, but he's like, anytime you're going to use food as medicine or food as because it breaks down calcium or the calcification, like the hardening, you need an oil. You need like a
Oh,
carrier. And
okay.
he keeps doing this with his hands, like he's really passionate. You
Okay.
need an oil that can actually carry those nutrients, like and break the barrier. He says to the pineal gland through the cells, in the cells. He says.
Okay, so you can't just have
Um,
cilantro on your salad, maybe toss it around with a little olive oil or something like that? Or are you talking about essential oils only?
the potency is not the same, he says, between like olive oil and frankincense oil.
Oh, okay.
I don't even know what he
Okay.
really means by that. He says if you can get an oil, try frankincense.
Okay.
He said.
Can you eat that?
Um,
Is that edible?
he says, yeah, it comes in a lot of forms.
Okay.
And lemon too, lemons,
Okay.
lemon oil.
Okay.
He just keeps saying like all different kinds of lemons, lemon juice,
Okay.
like natural though, like fresh squeezed,
Yeah.
not shit you buy at the store.
Yeah, no. Okay. Now, does God look like anything?
Oh, he answered really quick and he said, Mom, God looks like you and
Oh,
me.
that's sweet. But if you were
I
to
like one about
if you
my
if you were to meet God in heaven, what would he look like? She. It doesn't have a gender, obviously, right? No gender.
Yeah, that's so funny that right before you said she, he goes, it's not really a he. And then you went she. And he's
It's
like,
funny. But no, it's genderless, right?
right, right. He goes, you can, God is pure and strong. The strength, like the purity is almost like tangible. Like this is what I see when he shows me what God looks like. Okay, versus just different forms of God, of
Mm-hmm.
energy. Like over here might be just a regular person, which sounds terrible to say that.
A regular
And their
person.
energy, I know, you see, this sounds so bad. I'm sorry. You see like all these little like balls of light that just move and swirl. And there's space between them. You can see like space between them. But then over here, when he tries to show what God energy is like, it's solid. It's solid light. Like you can't
Okay.
see space between the little moving things that
Okay.
make up light.
Mm-hmm.
It's just solid light. So it's a pure that so that's where the strength is. So because of the strength, it's often perceived as masculine, he says. But God is not man, God is not woman, God is all, he says.
Okay.
God embodies all light. And he's going like from here to here, and he's talking about like a light spectrum or scale. But these are, oh, this is neat. He says these are lights that have music, Mom. These are lights or
Oh.
colors, rather. These are colors that have music. These are colors that have their own life.
Mm.
And this all is what is the makeup of God. And you're one of those colors, Mom. Yeah, I have chills.
Wow.
So he's God, because of like the all-encompassing, you can't perceive these kind of colors, he says. Not with these kind of eyes, he says. I said, so can you show me with like the third eye? Is that possible in a, in that way? And he said it's more of a feeling. To feel the color is to understand it. Because he says sometimes seeing, you analyze it and that gets in the way
True.
of actually experiencing what it is.
Right.
So the feeling of what it does to you, and that's why he's calling them like music.
Wow.
Music lifts your vibration and carries you. So that's what God is.
Wow. Well, so it's a spectrum of everything is light, everything is energy, everything is God, and God is a spectrum from very bright to very dark or very varied colors. That means God, evil must be whole and part of God too. Evil things, evil people. I mean,
Let me get that in just 1 second. I want to share what he's talking about because he
okay.
said he's continuing to show like these colors, this solid light, and he says, and God is self-repairing, self-healing.
Oh,
Because I asked him, I
that's
said,
handy.
can that light? I said, can that light ever be damaged, or does
Yeah.
it need repair like we do? And he's like, no, it's self-repairing. So and he said it in a very matter-of-fact tone. When we accept God in us as us,
And we're
we accept
self-preparing.
healing too.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's how we can overcome illness, Mom.
Oh,
This like makes me want to cry because he's actually crying
wow.
and
Oh,
talking. Yeah. Um, he's actually talking about how so many, oh man.
oh,
Oh, sorry.
oh.
Did not expect to cry this morning.
I wish I was there to hug you, baby.
He says, so many people go through such unnecessary illness because they have long ago rendered themselves powerless and godless because they are conditioned and taught to believe that God is something outside of them, that they worship out over there, instead of bringing it in here. And then when we allow that without question, there's no questions in that process, then we overcome, Mom. We overcome. He just keeps repeating that. So no matter what illness it is, we
Oh,
overcome. He's like showing me, my neighbor was just diagnosed with Guillain-Barré syndrome, if that's
oh
how you
yeah.
say it.
Hmm.
Oh, terrible, terrible
Oh, it
thing.
is. Yeah.
And he's like showing like even something in that case, it's a matter of presence, becoming one and present again with that. When we live in patterns of such, like where we've given our power away and we've given our God away, the God in us, we've let that be somewhere else, then there is no presence in the cells, in the physical body. And then that's when illness can manifest. And that's where he's kind of coming in and talking about like these darker lights,
Hmm.
darker energies. So it's not really like, it's just an absence of light, he says. It's not like it's a dark shade. It's just an absence
Is
of
it
light, which
complete
is
absent or is it less light?
less light.
Okay. Because everything is
It's
light.
not,
That's right. Right.
yeah, he says it's not complete absence, it's just less. And that's why it gives us that effect of that it's darker. And he says, and by the way, let's go ahead and bust up that myth that because it's dark means it's bad, because that's not true. That's not true. So don't associate dark colors, shadows, or whatever with bad. So let that go,
Well,
people.
there's no bad or good, right? Because can't be. If everything is God, how could they be bad?
Right. And the way we have evil and people that do terrible things is that big variable called free will. We use that. We employ the ego. We have the choice, and when we make these choices from here and not here. That's when you see that happen, Mom.
Of course, you
It
could
says
also
in the
have
show.
people doing evil things as part of a spiritual contract to sacrifice themselves and play the relationship villain, or to help the masses learn or individuals learn and grow. So,
He says he says that's right, because he says, just think about it like this. If all you ever had was the color red, how would you know any other colors?
that's right.
How would you ever grow? If
We
all
have to
you
have the
ever had.
contrast. Yeah, we have to have the contrast. We can't understand hot unless we experience cold. Yeah.
Right. So he says there is value in it, but let's bust this myth too. He says, like, there's value in, like, these things happening that are sacrificial, but they seem so horrific. And over here, just purity of whatever life. So he says, let's get one thing straight. You don't have to have the polarity to know God in yourself.
Mm.
You need the polarity for evolution, like universal evolution. So you don't have to have a bad side of you to know the good side of you, to know the God side of you. So forget that shit, he
Okay.
says.
All right.
So
An exception to the
it's,
rule.
yeah, it's just like it's the polarity is there for you, is given to you so you know and have evolution.
I see. So, the basic thing is we should not question that we are God, and because that's questioning to me is like a form of resistance, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That's what he was saying earlier, is as soon as we begin to question, we resist what we naturally
Yeah.
are.
Okay.
And and then we push ourselves into what people call being asleep, he
Okay.
says.
All right. All right. Does God have a purpose or some sort of plan?
He says, what do you mean?
I don't know. What do
With
I mean?
let's see how he'll answer. Because he goes, I can address this on, well, we'll just have him do both. He goes, I can
Okay.
address this on, like, the human level, the purpose with the humans, or the universal level with, like, all that is. Um, he goes, you want me to make it simple?
Yeah, make it simple because I would like to get through these questions, but it may not be possible. Might have to have a part two.
He's showing, like, a big bang, he says. Like, this is a universal picture, I guess. So he's showing a big bang. So what I mean by that is, like, every little thing from this tiny little ant in its little colony to humans to, all different types of animals and trees, different species of grass, he says. All of these things are different forms of life, God, consciousness, that are coming back into, it's like divine remembrance, remembering the divine self, coming back into the full wholeness. So that creates, like, complete expansion. That's the word he's using.
Okay.
And it's like when the last, he's like showing these cogwheels. Okay, everything is evolving
Mm-hmm.
into that higher consciousness, that oneness. And again, so think about how free will plays a part in this, because we're always going to have people choosing through free will to do this or that, or different things happening. So, but ultimately, everything is still moving up vibrationally. When that last little piece clicks, it's like this big bang. Like, it just shows, like, he literally shows, like, a
Wow.
whiteout. Like, everything just blasts and comes back into one form, one wholeness, one
We
consciousness
go back to
that is
God,
God.
to being part of God. Okay, wow.
Exactly.
Um, all right. Does God think? Because my next question is, does he have any, he, it, whatever, have any thoughts about each religion and each holy book? Is God like sentient energy, like thinking energy?
God is he's showing more like feeling energy and like responding, like because he is showing reaction, like feeling and reacting,
Okay.
feeling and reacting. So he says there's no he or she,
Yeah,
and
it. I'll say it.
feeling. And then when he talks about like religions, um, this is what Erik says in his comparison to knowing God, and then addressing what religion is. He says religion is man's way of trying to understand God.
Oh, yeah.
So, but religion in the holy books, they're here, and God's out here.
Mm,
So he's saying, he's taking all books, all religions, he's got them all out in front of him. He says there's no one that's greater than the other. It's
no.
just different interpretations of how one is trying to understand.
Hmm.
But in the human form, you can't come into that complete understanding because you have ego. There
Yeah.
is, it's the flip side of you. It's the other side of the coin. It's the same coin, but you might just be living on the love side, but the other side is still there. So he says there's no one right way or wrong way. There's none that is valid or invalid. It just is what it is. And it's like an attempt, he says, to understand what God is. But
But
he's
it's hard to do that when we're humans because we do have an ego that filters everything. And even the creation of these holy books, I'm sure some ego was involved. And how you interpret your own religion, I'm sure some ego is involved. So, you know, I
he says
think we need to take it with a grain of
he,
salt.
yeah, he says ego in the form of capitalism, like capitalizing on their beliefs as being the best. From one religion to the next, one holy book from the next. It's to be able to okay, this is what he says for everybody watching and listening. If you're looking at like what religion do I resonate with the most, if you need that outlet, he says if you can look at these religions and find truth in them all, then you know God. He goes,
Oh,
that's all.
all
If you
right.
can
So,
find truth in all of this,
is
then
there
you know you've already.
is there one
Go ahead.
religion that has more right than the others, or more closely as an understanding of God than all the rest?
Um, I hope I say it like Baha'i faith,
Oh, really? Okay.
Baha'i.
I've
It's like
heard
a
of that.
religion,
I've
but
heard of that. Oh God, now I have to figure out how to spell that. How do you spell that, Eric? When I
I know
transcribe.
I was hearing like Ubai or something. Baha'i, Bahai,
Okay, or maybe there's B
B.
apostrophe Hai. I'll look it up.
Yeah, I want to look this up.
Okay, me too.
But he says it's to be able to honor all like truth and all. That's when you know God. And to not capitalize on your perspective, your views, your religions, as because of course that's just ego. That's ego
Yeah,
needs to do that.
yeah. Dang ego. So was God ever like created, and will it ever die?
The created part, this is what he does. When I said, was God ever created? He goes like this.
Oh,
So he's not,
was it all? Did it
um,
always exist? I mean, because we have our linear timeline. We were born, we die, so we think everything has to match that same
right,
parallel. But maybe God always
right.
existed.
Right. That's what kind of what he was saying when you said, "Did God always exist?" He circled the word "always,"
Ah,
because it's even still associated with like the concept of time. So that that energy in your English words has always been there, he says.
but
And
what
when
was
you
this
say,
all
"Will
about?
God?"
What was the zipping up of the lips? Is there something we shouldn't know?
As far as like that was more, what he's showing is like how God was created or how God began to create, like the beginning, the start of all. Like there's still a lot of mystery to it, and there's still a lot that I can't share, and it's
Okay.
in accordance to where humans are, he says, in their like capacity to understand. He's showing God releasing, now bear with me here and keep in mind that God is us, okay? So follow me, because this is almost like a double meaning what he's showing. He says God releasing waves of information at times to continue our growth, our expansion and evolution. But when he says God releasing, it's us coming into like the collective consciousness moving, shifting.
Okay.
So he goes, just think about that for a while.
Okay.
Just chew on that. But then when you said, will God ever die? He says, no, it's infinite, because now life, like physical forms,
Is it?
will
It's not.
transition.
Yeah. Yeah.
The energy behind it won't die. He's showing like for every action there's a reaction. So it's a continuum. It's an infinite possibility, he says. I like that he
I
said it
like
that
the
way.
infinite possibility. So, did God create humanity and all life for that matter?
He says yes, God is experiencing self in this way
So
as
that's its
man.
purpose. It wants to experience itself, really,
Hmm.
because
As man, as woman, as cat, as dog, as butterfly, God is experiencing self in all of these forms. Why? Because why do you think there's such a massive amount of species that just live in the ocean?
yeah.
A massive amount of different, insect species that live in the forest. Because God is experiencing self at all of these different levels
So
that create.
God by itself is just pure love, and that's like only having cold, and you need hot to really understand what cold is. So in order to understand itself as love, it must have the polarity. It must even have experienced the evil and just all the colors in that spectrum, all the shades of light. Is that what you're? Is that
Yeah.
what God's
In the
purpose
very
is?
Yes, and he says in the varying levels of consciousness, because you know, a cow doesn't think the same way a human thinks. So, and even humans, operate at very different levels of consciousness. So he said if we could, oh, that's interesting. He just showed me this image. He said if we could operate at with our brains, you know how we're supposedly only using like 10%. If we were using
5%
100% full self,
here.
full self awareness, then we would. He shows us like literally vanishing into um, spirit form, like going back
Wow.
into that pure whole self awareness.
Okay.
So we've come here with like a limited amount of consciousness.
Okay. Now
He's
I have
laughing.
a couple of just yes and no questions because I think we've already touched on them. So basically, God, the big Kahuna, not the little tendrils that are us and different life forms, does not influence our actions. It's not like it's God's will. That does not happen, right? He's not an external force that affects these little tendrils called us and other life forms.
This is really interesting. This is how he answers your question. He says, he looks at you with a real serious look on his face. He goes, maybe we need to discuss God's will versus free will and what that actually means.
Okay.
Because we are God and we are creator, we use, he's almost making me feel like and showing like free will and God's will are the same thing, because we are, I don't know who keeps calling. Stop it. They just got done calling you. Now they're calling me.
I
No, I'm
know.
kidding.
No, that was my alarm.
He's showing like because God is living, experiencing self as Kim. Okay, so just follow me for a minute. And he's showing like, well, there's free will, there's choice in how Kim decides to live her life. Um, so when we look at, well, it's God's will, it is God's will, but in the form of Kim, or Kim's will,
Okay.
Kim's free
All
will.
right.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I get it.
So, because like when people even like with illness, we're like, well, it's just God's will be done. It is God's will, for them to go through that illness or whatever. But he's bringing it more. He's like personifying it more to each person.
I get it.
And what they're going through. So
Okay.
he's showing a really interesting link between free will and God's will.
Oh, interesting. All right. Can we? Oh, yeah, Eric. Can you briefly tell us about your first meeting of God, with God, rather?
He went like this. He goes, ooh. He took like a big deep, and at the same time, he showed me this image of like. He says, "Mom, it's like complete. You don't even have a choice, Mom, to let go of what ails you. It's just gone. It's just washed. When you come into that energy, that love, that awareness, it's such a pure, high. Oh man, can you see these
Wow.
chills?
Dang.
It's such a pure, high energy. It's coming. It's like he goes, imagine yourself stepping in a room where you feel like you feel good, like the sun's kissing you in a perfect way, but there's no hot and there's no cold. It's just the embrace that you feel. And then he's talking about, and you are reminded of your own greatness, and you don't need to worry, like to feel, Mom, that euphoria. He's showing like what it is to come into that euphoria of not having worry. It's naturally washed from you. It's not like I have to go, okay, I'm going to let go of this, because most of the time we don't have the capacity to do that. It's a constant battle. And the more we try,
The
the
worse it
more,
gets.
yeah. So he's showing like you step into that room and it's like you just come into all knowing, all awareness, and you have the understanding that you are like omnipresent. And in the euphoria of the realization of who you are, what you are, sort of that prevails, like that goes above it and before everything.
Wow, that's pretty
Everything
amazing.
else, and he's showing himself. He's showing an image of himself literally going into light, and like all of these layers just
Washed away.
being like washed out of him, like falling behind him.
Can we experience that in our bodies, or we have to wait until we transition?
He says you can, not completely,
Yeah.
not in a complete manner, but you can. Um, that's why you see a lot of people purge when they really go into like a deep meditation and set their intentions to experience this. They will purge like the lack of light, and whatever is ailing them because of the lack of light.
So it's pretty much through
Um,
meditation that you have to get there. The most common way, anyway. Okay.
Yeah, he says it's all matter of fact though, and you have to move beyond the thought process, but that's hard for some people to do.
All right.
So
Now,
through meditation.
here's another yes or no question. A lot of people have this idea that of a wrathful God that will smite you. That is not true, right?
He said, God doesn't punish you. God doesn't hold things against you because God is now. So if we are coming into the realization of God being love, why would God blackmail us? Why would God
Yeah, of course not. I think that that
hold
was
something up?
that whole idea was created so that the people in power could oppress and control the masses. is there such thing as hell or the devil?
He says, yeah, but not like you know it, not like it's been told. He
Well, what is it
says,
like?
hell and the devil is your own ego.
Oh, I see. Yeah, of
And
course.
when you live in that, he says, and he's so like, his tone is so blunt when he talks about this. He's like, and then when you live there, you are living in hell because you've employed that energy.
Hmm.
It's an energy that again has like a lack of light. He's
Lack of
showing
light, yeah.
that's what they call it, darkness and all of those things. But he says, you live in it. It's disillusioned from your true self. So you begin to believe the lies and you react to them, creating further
Yeah.
disillusion.
What about the
And
what about the devil? Does he exist? Or she? The she devil?
he says, again, he says, yeah, but not like you know it, not like it's been told. It's an energy. So it's an energy that um, is a lack of light. It's a lower vibrational field. So we can choose. Most of the time, we don't understand or we're not aware that we're choosing. We choose to employ that consciousness. So we get depressed and we have like negative thoughts that linger in that energy field. And then we believe them and then we get further depressed and
Mm-hmm.
further and further. And then so we become demonic, he says. You
Oh.
could call it that if you want.
Or demonic energies can attach to us. They feed off of our negative energies, right?
He says it's more like we employ them
All right.
because we exist there with them energetically. It's like, again, like an energy sink.
Okay.
So we can employ and be that energy. We can be the devil, which is really shocking.
It's weird.
But it's a choice.
Can God be channeled?
He says, he's such a turd. He's like, so matter of fact, he's like, yep.
All right. Well, Kim, can you try to channel a message from God, or you don't have to if you don't want to? That would take a.
Sure. he goes like this. He's like doing his hands like a mime, and he goes, Erik Medhus must move aside, and he's like backing up.
Oh my God! Like I would like to know what he thinks about what's happening what it thinks about what's happening in the world, and if it has a message for humanity.
So the energy that I feel when I actually feel really heavy, like my body feels really heavy, but it's a good, calm, heavy.
Ah, okay.
When I listen, it's just, if I could just draw pictures, this is what I see. I literally just see like waves that just keep moving. So when I see Erik, sometimes I see him as blue, sometimes I see him with his hair and his physical features.
Oh, okay.
Most of the time I see flatter.
Okay.
But this is just like an energy wave that again I can't see through. It's solid.
Oh, interesting.
The light.
Yeah. Is it many colors?
But yes, it's somehow like white, but it's rainbow at the same time.
Ooh, cool.
But I feel like I shouldn't move, like I can't move because it's such a still feeling. In regards to, I'm sorry, what did you even ask? I'm like, so
what does he ask it what it thinks about this? What's happening in the world now? And then 2 more quick questions, and we're done.
The feeling that I get is there's no judgment.
Okay. So he does not. Not judge. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I don't want to say no comment, but there's no judgment. There's just acceptance and understanding because it's remember it's self, acceptance of self at all levels. So that's what we're to achieve. That's what I'm hearing, that we're to achieve acceptance of self at all levels completely, and then you know God in you.
Okay. Now, do you have a message for humanity, God?
It's the feeling of this is the message, be one with self. It's not be one with me. be one with self.
Okay.
Because that wholeness, the less you argue with yourself, the more still you are with yourself, the more you come into that. You shed all these layers that create struggle and misery, and you become heaven on earth
Oh, that makes
in
sense.
here.
Wow. Now, the last,
So
oh,
go ahead. I was just going to kind of reiterate, but go ahead.
the last thing I would like is if you can give a message for Erik, Kim, and me separately or together, whatever.
Oh, cool. So this is what I feel for you. Um, the energy feels like so smooth. Like I don't know how to explain it. It's like such a smooth. I just feel like I just want to go like this all day. I know that sounds.
Oh, must be nice.
Um, this is what I hear for you. To okay, mindfulness occurs when one knows self and does not absorb self through others.
Okay.
Like okay, so I guess the way I would translate this is others might say things about you or do things to you, but that don't let that become self in the way that you see, think, or believe about yourself.
I don't.
Um,
I'm not externally directed at all. So that's good. I'll keep doing that.
this energy is so
Cool,
intense.
huh? You're so lucky. What about a message for Kim?
I'm going to Erik next. I'll
Okay.
go last.
Oh,
Um, this is what, and it's funny because now I see Erik kind of stepped back in and he's wearing like a dark blue t-shirt, just solid, plain solid blue.
okay.
He must have liked blue.
He did.
But this is what, this is interesting. The word that's linking, oh wow, that's like, there's a word that's descriptive of the energy going back and forth
Mm,
between, like, the back and forth is not to denote separateness, though, so understand that.
okay.
But when we're chanting in this way, this is what I see. The word that's between the energy of God and Erik, of course, with God, is freedom. So Erik, to continue and employ complete freedom to be who he is and evolve and grow, because he says he made a comment. He says, "I'm just getting started." In the ways that he helps people, evolve and grow. The energy that Erik is employing through God and with God is the freedom
Okay.
to do that, to be that
Mm.
for people. So then it's funny because I never channel for myself. So to channel for myself feels really weird. So like,
You don't have to if you don't want to.
oh, it's okay. I'm good. So okay, so it's the energy is very direct about um, move. It's very blunt. Erik Erik gets it honestly, I guess, from the creator. The
Yeah.
bluntness is, which is interesting. Wow, to experience it like that. So what I hear is move from the head to the heart, um, which makes sense because as you know, probably, the last couple months have been really rough,
Oh,
and I've been in my head a lot with a
yeah.
lot. The
But
husband
a lot of us are. Most of
deployed,
us are. Most of us are. Yeah.
and I try to live in through the heart and meditate as much as I can to maintain that awareness. But here lately, it seems like it's been
It's
really
hard.
challenging.
Yeah, very hard.
And
Oh,
I
wow.
think part of it for me is to have patience. There's these projects I'm working on that it's hard to be patient with, and
Hmm.
you just got to keep faith, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
That's a very powerful
um,
message. Well,
ooh, good
that was awesome.
to
Kim,
hear.
do you want to close off by saying that by making any announcements or saying something about yourself before we say goodbye to both God and Erik?
Sure, sure. Um, oh, Eric's still talking. He's like, you don't have to say goodbye. You can say welcome, he
That's
says.
true. That's true.
Um, well, I guess I'll just throw it out there. My book will be available soon in just a couple weeks. It's crazy. It's exciting because it's just my first book. So I'm already looking back and reading my own book going, oh, wow, why didn't I talk about this? So I'm already working on the second book. But this book is called Inside Out, and it's a journey to inner peace to help hopefully inspired through all of these stories that we did last year, traveling and channeling Erik. Um, Everybody that had bleeding hearts shared their bleeding hearts, and I couldn't believe the honesty that people shared. And so that's what fostered, the birth of this book.
I
Is
cannot wait to read it. It's going to be so good. You guys can get it on. Maybe by the time you watching this video, it's probably available on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and other places.
June 17th.
June
June
what?
17th. June 17th. It'll be available, and I'll be doing a book launch event in Asheville, North Carolina, and I will also be doing the channeling workshops, teaching you guys how to channel and channeling for you. So if you're interested, you can find tickets on my website. I will have books at that event if you want to pick up one there. But also, don't forget, every Thursday night, check out Erik's channeling, or Erik's Hour of Enlightenment. So lots of wonderful information available to you guys on the blog at channelingerik.com.
Yeah, somebody just wrote in saying that we should devote one radio show to callers who want to share how channeling Erik has changed their lives. I think that would be a good idea.
Oh, I think that would too, because just when you think you've heard it all, someone shares something and you're like, oh my gosh,
I know.
that would be great. I
Yeah.
mean, because not only just sharing the stories and giving people the platform to do so, but when you listen to those stories, it opens up the way you think. It opens up new perspective. So, and Erik is even talking about how when you hear these new perspectives, you create space for it. When you
That's
say,
true.
"Oh wow," you create space for it. So you evolve in just listening in the process.
Yeah.
So,
All
very
right.
cool idea.
I think
Thanks,
it would be,
whoever
yeah.
wrote.
We might not even allow Erik to have his 20-minute talk first. We'll probably have so many callers. And anyway, so Kim's site is www.kimbabcott.net, and check out Channeling Erik. Erik is spelled with
That's
a
right.
K.com. And I love you, Erik. I love you, God. I love you, Kim.
I love you too. Erik says, "I'm always here for you, Mom." He says, "I love you."
Happy travels, Kim. Have a
God,
great time.
thank you, thank you. This is what I just heard when you said, "I love you, God." Um, I just heard that God is the one speaking that through you. So
Oh,
very
okay.
interesting.
Wow.
Very cool.
Good.
Thank you. I'm heading to Hawaii tomorrow, and I cannot wait. I
Poor
can't wait. They call it
thing. Oh.
they call it the heart chakra of the earth, and it is. It's so
Ooh,
there's something about that land that just demands a hush over you, and it's incredible. So I
that's
can't wait to
cool.
get there.
That's
Be a
good.
long day of travel, but it's
Yeah,
worth
but
it.
it'll be worth it. Have a good time, sweetie.
Thank you. Take
Bye.
care.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Prepara